Hey everyone, Steven here with another buttered popcorn review. Just to forewarn you, this is a spoiler review. There will be spoilers throughout. So, if you don't want to get spoiled, I encourage you to go and see this movie and then come back and see me for the review. So, let's get started. First things first, biopics are hard. It is very difficult to pull off a cradle to the grave kind of story and do the story justice and the person that you are doing it for justice. Then add on top of that, music biopics are even harder than that. You've got 2.5 hours basically to tell a story. And not only do you have that, but you've got to cram all of this musician's catalog, or at least a good chunk of this musician's catalog, into this 2.5 hours. And so what happens is each musical interlude cuts into the story, but you can't tell a musician's story without getting into their music. People go to biopic movies to relive some nostalgia, and Whitney Houston has a huge catalog to choose from as far as the songs that they're going to put in the biopic. But again, the more time we spend re-experiencing these iconic performances and this iconic music, the less time we actually have for her story. Which is why this movie honestly left me wanting more. We didn't get a lot of time to spend fully fleshing out story points. Instead, what we got were highlights. Bullet points in basically an outline of a movie. Anytime that we touched upon a pivotal moment in Miss Houston's life, we were quickly whisked away to the next moment. Scenes just weren't allowed to properly breathe before moving on to the next thing. So we got highlights, but for every highlight we got, there were just as many things in Whitney's extraordinary life and in her extraordinary career that either got the faintest of lip service or were just ignored altogether. For instance, they spent so little time in her relationship with Bobby Brown that for the life of me, based on this movie alone, I couldn't figure out why the hell they were together in the first place. The Cinderella movie was given the quickest of mentions in literally one line of dialogue. Whereas the Diane Sawyer interview, again, an iconic interview, was completely ignored. The Michael Jackson tribute performance was completely ignored as well, but yet they touched upon her Super Bowl performance. They spent the briefest of moments on The Bodyguard, and as for Waiting to Exhale and The Preacher's Wife, they completely ignored both of those movies, which is a shame because of the soundtrack to both of those films, especially with The Preacher's Wife. Just really quick side note, they did spend time at the very beginning of the movie talking about Whitney Houston's gospel roots. And, they showed her singing lead in her choir with her mother, Cissy Houston, directing. But that was it. And The Preacher's Wife, that movie, and the soundtrack was, from what I understand about Whitney, it was her favorite piece of art that she ever put out, but they never they didn't spend time on it. And it was like this for the entirety of the movie. Just the highlights without enough breathing room in between iconic performances to expand on any themes at all, which is why it ultimately left me wanting more. But to be fair, those highlights we got were good highlights. They didn't shy away from her lesbian relationship with Robin Crawford. They didn't shy away from her rampant drug use. They didn't shy away from her contentious relationships with both of her parents. And interestingly enough, they also didn't shy away from the idea and the purposefulness of them marketing her as America's princess, America's sweetheart. Both within her team and within her family, they created this, and they called it product, which was Whitney Houston, what other people saw her, and it ultimately wasn't her. It was just a product, but at the same time, they didn't spend a lot of time with it. I mean, we got a sense through the movie that Whitney was very, very lonely. She didn't have a lot of people that she could trust, and she was very, very unhappy, especially near the end of her life. The cast, with only a few glaring omissions, completely disappeared in their roles. Stanley Tucci was fabulous as Clive Davis. Tamara Tooney, who has been in everything, was amazing as Cissy Houston. I did not know that Cissy Houston was such a hard ass, and I didn't realize Whitney's relationship with Cissy was so contentious. I knew that her relationship with her father, played by Clark Peters, in this movie was contentious. In fact, he sued her near the end of his life to get money from her. So I knew that her relationship with John Huston, her father, was contentious, but I didn't know that she had such a strained relationship with her mother. So Nafisa Williams, as Robin Crawford, chef's kiss, she did a wonderful job. So what were the glaring omissions? Well, first of all, her brief romance with Jermaine Jackson. I mean, they got that man straight out of Central Casting. And it was only briefly touched upon as well. Ashton Sanders as Bobby Brown. There was absolutely zero chemistry between her and Bobby Brown. And not for nothing, but they got the gap wrong on Bobby. It was very, very clear that the gap was fake, first of all. And second of all, it literally looked like they grabbed a magic marker and did the gap in his front teeth. It was horrible. But again, going back to the idea that based on this movie alone, I had no idea why Whitney and Bobby were together. Part of that was because there was absolutely zero chemistry between the two of them. And that's a shame because Ashton Sanders is actually a really, really, really good actor. He was in Moonlight. But speaking of Naomi, who played Whitney, first of all, let me say this. Naomi had an absolute Herculean task to do in portraying Whitney Houston. There's absolutely no two ways about that. Her taking on that role, Whitney is such a larger-than-life kind of character, and she had a larger-than-life kind of a life. There's just no way that she could have done it to please everybody. I think she did an okay job. And the reason why I don't think that she did any more than okay is because I truly didn't see her disappearing in the role. Anytime Naomi was on screen, I couldn't help but think, wow, Naomi is doing a really good job at impersonating Whitney Houston. She had all the mannerisms down. She had the way she moved her body, the way she moved her hands, the way she sang, the way she performed. Even when she wasn't singing, she had Whitney's talking voice down. She had Whitney's regular mannerisms down. It's just that it always felt like an impression. She didn't disappear into the role. And not for nothing, Naomi looks nothing like Whitney. Nothing like her. And I don't know why they didn't cast someone that looked like Whitney. I don't understand why they didn't do that. Because I think that was part of the problem, wherein when I was looking at her, I was like, wow, Naomi is doing a bang-up job at impersonating Whitney Houston. Again, she had a Herculean task. I do not envy her at all. I thought she did an okay job. In fact, I would even go so far as to say she did a good job, but the only problem is she didn't disappear into the role like pretty much everyone else did. Speaking of performances, let's talk about the music. As I said, you can't do a Whitney biopic without having a ton of Whitney's music in it, and in that regard, this movie did not fail. Now, what they did right with Naomi is they just had her lip sync, because again, there's no way. There's just no way. Whitney had a once-in-a-lifetime talent and voice and presence. You just can't duplicate that. But what I will say about the music is when you saw Naomi lip sync and then you heard Whitney's voice come through Naomi, you were taken away. You were lifted higher. There is truly nothing like watching a recreation of Whitney at her prime. Just listening to the music and remembering where you were when you saw Miss Whitney, do the Star Spangled Banner, do the American Music Awards, sing I Want to Dance with Somebody. Why Does It Hurt So Bad? If you said My Eyes Were Beautiful, you Give Good Love. Just hearing all of those hits and watching Naomi basically channel Whitney as best as she could. Nothing like it. It was so good. Whitney was truly a gift. Whitney was truly, truly, truly a gift. Oh, on a scale of 1 to 5 butter pumps, how many butter pumps am I going to give I Want to Dance with Somebody? Well, I'll tell you. I'm going to give it 3.5 butter pumps. And the reason why is, if you are a Whitney fan like I am, you will enjoy the highlights. That's what this movie is, just highlights of her life, as well as the musical performances. So that's why I enjoyed it. And if you're not a Whitney fan, you'll maybe learn some things that maybe you didn't know before. It was 2.5 hours. I don't want my money back. I left the theater satisfied, but yet, again, still wanting more. So have you seen I Want to Dance with Somebody? What did you think about it? How many butter pumps would you give it? Share your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.